This is a video I'm going to be working on here. I'm converting this old fluorescent light box, Model Petite, from fluorescent to LED. Bought this back when the wife and I were taking a photography class before digital cameras were a thing, and needed this to look at slides and negatives and such. And inside of it there's a reflector and a small fluorescent light bulb, and then underneath that there is a tiny little inverter that converts 6 volts DC into 120 volts AC, and I'm going to be replacing it with this little boost converter that takes the 6 volts and converts that to 12 volts, which will be needed by this LED strip. And hopefully it'll work as good as the, well, work better than the fluorescent bulb. The fluorescent bulb was very dim. Never really ever was bright. Anyways, so let's see here. Okay, so we need to disconnect these two wires and remove this piece, and then we can insert the other piece. So, of course, they did the wiring backwards from most common DC power sources. They've got the center negative and the outside positive, so I'm going to have to fix that. Back in a bit. Okay, all I did was swap the red and the black wires on this, and then applied power and verified that red and positive and negative were coming out of the black wires. I had already prepared one of these boost converters. I set it to 12 volts and just gonna install it. Okay. Gotta get some wire. Back in a minute. Okay, I got this lightweight wire. Can't remember, I think it's 20 gauge or 21 gauge. And it's got one side is white and the other one has a black mark on it. So the black mark will be negative. blue wires aren't going to be needed since I'm not using a high voltage, or the let's see if I can get these out at some point. I got to set up something back. Okay, it's been a day since I filmed the first part of this video, and I kind of jumped ahead. I wired in these 2 LED strips, put them in parallel and wired them in here, and in my testing I found that my rewiring of this socket was incorrect and created a short when there were batteries in it. So I have to correct that. This diagram right here, if I can zoom in on that, you can see that this is the switch, or the socket. This is how when you insert the thing, it disconnects the power from the battery, and is supposed to send that into the device through the switch. But what it does is, when this is closed now, is you just have a straight loop. These are not diodes, these are just my representation of springs. And so it has to be completely redone like this. So I'm going to come back in a little bit. I'm not going to do it on camera because it's going to take a while, and most people who watch YouTube videos are really impatient. Back in a little bit. Alright, so I've made all the changes, and we'll go over them here. Basically I just reused all the wires. So what I did is I ran the yellow wire from here to here, disconnected all the other wires that were on this side. I ran the white wire to the center of this, which is this tab on the back. I ran the red wire from the battery to here, and what that will do is, when you plug this in, it cuts off the negative and starts feeding positive into here and into here. Now this positive does not connect anywhere else to this battery, so there shouldn't be any back feeding into it. The negative that was going to the switch is on this connection here, and the blue from the negative of these batteries, they're in series, so you have negative, positive, negative, positive. So this is one end of the 6 volts, and this other black one goes through the switch, comes out and goes to here. When the adapter is plugged in, right now there's a little contact in here, and it's connecting the blue and the black wire together, and that allows the negative through the switch to come into here, and then the positive from the battery to come into here. So then you get your 6 volts to this boost converter. When you plug this in, you break the contact, you disconnect this side and you take the negative and you put it straight in here. So the negative from here goes through this black wire, through the switch, through into this boost converter, while the positive comes in from the center, goes out to here, goes here to the red wire, and then to this. So what you get is let's see, this is being powered by the batteries, and when I plug it in, it will blink for a second, and then it will be powered from my power supply. So there you go, and then when I unplug it, same thing, it blinks and then it's plugged by the power supply. You could, never mind. So let me just bugs me that that constantly falls out of there. I've also hot glued this in, and put a piece of hot glue to keep this from popping up. Alright, so let's turn this around and we'll put it in place, and I'll explain why I've done what I've done. Well, that is being difficult. Those screws did come out of there. I'm just going to cheat. I just don't want that card to move. Let me turn off this light. And there we go. Random picture of people, I don't know who they are. And let's plug in DC power. And there you go. One other thing about this, when it's running on, it's set for 6 volts to convert 6 volts to 12 volts. When it does that, it uses approximately 170 milliamps. If I reduce the power, this thing will, I think it will work on as little as like 2 volts. But if we drop this down to, let me give it a little more amps. If we drop this down to 3 volts, so at 5 volts it needs 190 milliamps. At 3 or 4 volts it needs 240. At 3 volts it needs 330, and then it kicks out at 2. So just understand, if the lower the voltage you give it, the more amps it needs. And conversely, if you go from 6 volts to, I'm going up to 7, 150 milliamps, 8, 130, 9, 110, 10 is 100 milliamps, 11 is 80 milliamps, and if you go 12, well, it still goes to 80 milliamps, which is about 20%, or what twice these two are. And one last thing, the reason why I get the light back on. The reason I went with two of these, you can use just one, but I think if I were to do this again, which I never will, I would put them up a little higher, because then the light would reflect more this way. Where they are right now, most of the light comes from the center, the center of this. But it's still about 10 times brighter than the fluorescent one ever was. So, anyways, that's it. Thanks for watching.